The story of a young lady by the name of Mary came home one day with a dog, brought this dog home, mangy looking little mutt, right? Brings it home, and of course, to her, it's the most beautiful dog ever, the most beautiful dog she's ever seen. She brings it home, which brings about an argument with her mother about whether or not they're going to keep the dog. And so they go back and forth. We're keeping it. No, got to get rid of it. No, I want to keep it. You know how that goes. Back and forth. Finally, this culminated about a week or so in, which I'm thinking Mary's winning the argument. It's a weekend and the dog is still there. And so about a weekend or so, Mary comes home from school to see the dog, the female dog, running around the yard, being followed by a pack of male dogs. Right? Running around the yard. Mary is so excited, she runs in the house and goes, Mommy, come to the window. Come and look. Our dog is a natural born leader. Leadership's kind of a tricky thing, right? We all know what's going on there, but she doesn't, right? Leadership's kind of a tricky thing. To her, the dog's just leading all the others around. That's what's going on. It's great. We all have a potential, or the potential, to be a leader. We really do. However, on occasion, deep down, I think there's a part of us too that wants to be led. We don't want always to lead. We want to also be led at times. That's kind of where we find ourselves this morning with our next ordinary hero. That's what we're going through this month, some ordinary heroes. And today we look at Deborah. Deborah's story is found in the book of Judges, chapters 4 and 5. And we're going to look at Judges 4, 1 through 9. That's what it says. After Ehud's death, the Israelites again did evil in the Lord's sight. So the Lord turned them over to King Jabin of Hazor, a Canaanite king. The commander of his army was Sisera, who lived in Harosheth Hagoyim. Sisera, who had 900 iron chariots, ruthlessly oppressed the Israelites for 20 years. Then the people of Israel cried out to the Lord for help. Deborah, the wife of Lapidoth, was a prophet who was judging Israel at that time. She would sit under the palm of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim, and the Israelites would go to her for judgment. One day she sent for Barak, the son of Abinoam, who lived in Kadesh in the land of Naphtali. She said to him, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, commands you. Call out 10,000 warriors from the tribes of Naphtali and Zebulun at Mount Tabor. And I will call out Sisera, commander of Jabin's army, along with his chariots and warriors, to the Kishon River. There I will give you the victory over him." Barak told her, "I will go, but only if you go with me." "Very well," she replied, "I will go with you. But you will receive no honor for this venture, for the Lord's victory over Sisera will be at the hands of a woman." So Deborah went with Barak to Kadesh. Deborah is the fourth judge of Israel. There's been these other guys before. The last one was Ehud, and he was there. If you look at the very end of chapter 3, like one verse, 3:30 or 31, it mentions a guy by the name of Shamgar. And Shamgar followed Ehud, and it says that he killed like 600 Gentiles or whatever they were, Canaanites at the time. But from that point on, for 20 years, the people did what was wrong, and Jabin, the king of the a Canaanite king, oppressed the Israelites for years until they finally cried out. We don't know what the oppression was. We don't know how long it took, other than the 20 years. But maybe within that 20 years, maybe it was one of those things where they started off, everything was great, everything was fine, not a big deal. And so we just go along, and slowly we're giving in, and we're giving them more power until finally it's at a point where this isn't what we thought this was going to be. And we begin to cry out. Or maybe it was an immediate oppression. It doesn't tell us. But after 20 years, Jabin has oppressed the people of Israel, and his general is Sisera. And Sisera is in the north. And here's the thing about that. The group, their army was stronger, it was better equipped, had more troops than the northern tribes, plus they had 900 iron chariots. Which to us, when we look at that, we go, okay, so they had 900 iron chariots. Don't know exactly what that means, but here's what that is. The advantage of having chariots, especially on the plains, which is where they would have been like having a Sherman tank during the Revolutionary War. Right? It was game-changing. It was completely different. It was not something that they were going to be able to deal with, that they knew how to deal with. Israel's army was very disorganized, very scattered, if you would. And so during this time, this 20 years, there's a time of great discouragement and doubt. No one wants to do anything. This is the situation that Deborah steps into. Deborah takes up the mantle of judge. She takes up the mantle of prophetess. She takes on a position of leadership for the people when no one else was willing to do it. No one else wanted to step in. No one else was willing. And so she stepped in, and being the judge, that meant she was the charismatic leader of Israel. She was the person. Thanks to Deborah's leadership, the Israelites head into battle and end up being victorious over this Canaanite army from the north, over Sisera. And they have peace for 40 years after that. Here's the thing, is I thought about this. I realized that we, as the church, are called to be like Deborah. We're supposed to be taking the lead in our culture. The church needs to be in the lead in our culture. Not with guilt or fear or self-righteous judgment. Not that kind of thing. We're called to lead with grace and truth, with humbleness and love. That's how people follow. That's how we become leaders in our culture. So how or what do we find in Deborah's story? What can we take out of this? First, I have a few things. First is that leaders are willing to step up when no one else will. In Judges chapter 5, verses 6 through 8, this is a poem. This retells the story of the Israelites' battle and win over Sisera. But in this part, in chapter 5, verses 6 through 8, this is what Deborah writes. In the days of Shamgar, son of Anak, and in the days of Jael, people avoided the main roads. The travelers stayed on winding paths. There were few people left in the villages of Israel until Deborah arose as a mother of Israel. When Israel chose new gods, war erupted at the city gates. Yet not a shield or spear could be seen among 40,000 warriors in Israel. When no one else wanted to, because they were so discouraged, they were so down, they were so oppressed, they didn't know what else to do. No one else was willing to step forward. Deborah stepped forward. Deborah chose to be that leader. Things were bleak. No one else wanted to do it. We understand that, right? It happens. There was a cold winter morning once when a soldier rode out from his encampment. As he was going, he noticed another group of soldiers who were building a wall. They were working to set a log up on top of this wall they had been building. They'd been at it for hours and they were tired. They were disgruntled. They were worn out. They were not having success. Every time they'd get the log up there and think they had it, it would come down. And as the soldier watched, he noticed a corporal sitting over to the side, barking orders. I mean, that's the only thing he was doing. That was the only thing that kept these men going. And so the soldier asked him, said, why don't you help him out? And he looked at him and said, Sir, I am a corporal. And so the soldier didn't say anything else, got off of his horse, went over, and he helped these guys get everything done. Got the log up on top of the wall. Got it set, got it ready to go. And as he put his cloak back on and remounted his horse, he looked at the corporal and said, well, next time you have a job like that needs to be done, just call for me for your General George Washington, and I'll be here to help. The guy didn't want to do it. Washington stepped in and took a position of leadership when no one else wanted to, when the guy who was supposed to be doing it didn't. A leader is someone who sees what needs to be done and does it. Often it's not glamorous. It's usually pretty thankless, in fact. And yet a leader puts all of that aside and just does it. Second thing that we learn from this is that leaders speak the truth to their followers. Deborah was known as a prophetess, which meant that she was the mouthpiece of God. The prophets, their main job was to speak the truth of God to the people. And so Deborah is speaking truth to the people. As we know, that's not always an easy thing to do, but it can be very, very necessary. It's easier to tell people the things they want to hear rather than what they need to hear. I don't know if anyone else experiences that. I'm bad about that at times. I will tell people at times what they want to hear rather than what I'm sure they probably need to hear, because I don't want to hurt their feelings. I don't want to upset them. But leaders will step in and speak truth to the people. Leaders, especially those who have chosen to follow Christ, need to be able to do this, but to do it in love. Speak truth to people in love. We don't just say what comes to mind, even when it's true. We do so with tact, and we do it with grace, because that's also part of being a leader. There's a poet, his name is Taylor Mawley, and he had this quote. I saw this on Twitter just the other day, and this is what he said: "When your thoughts are ignorant, saying what you think is not an admirable quality." If we want to be leaders in our culture, if we want the church to be a leader in the culture, we have to know how to say things with love, rather than with judgment, rather than in condescending words. We need to be able to speak truth to the culture in love. The third thing that we can take from this is that leaders make decisions. The people brought their disputes to Deborah. This is what's going on. We need a decision made on this. Deborah made those decisions. Leaders make decisions. They have to make hard decisions concerning those that they are leading. During World War II, Winston Churchill was forced to make a very difficult choice. The British Secret Service had cracked the German code. And so they came to him and said, "Great news, we know what's going on. We know where the Germans are going, what they're doing. We've cracked their code. Bad news, they are planning to bomb Coventry." And so with that information, Churchill had to make a choice. He had two options. He could evacuate Coventry and save hundreds of lives, and yet tip his hand to the Nazis that they had broken the code. Or he could choose to do nothing, sacrificing those lives, possibly hundreds of lives, but keeping the information flowing, possibly saving thousands, if not millions more. Churchill was faced with that decision, and he chose the second course. He didn't go the easy way. He had to make a tough decision. He chose no action at all. If the church is to lead our culture, in our world, in our communities, we have to be willing to make difficult decisions as a church and as Christians. The fourth thing that we learn from Deborah's story is that leaders are willing to take risks. The battle against Sisera, I said it should have been a no-brainer that we don't do that. They had 10,000 troops. We don't know how many, I don't know how many Sisera had, but he had 900 iron chariots. Like I said, those chariots were like introducing a tank, a Sherman tank during the Revolutionary War. It was not going to go well. Each chariot was heavily armored. It was drawn by at least 10 horses, had a driver and 4 archers, extra bows, hundreds of extra arrows. They were ready. They knew what they were doing. But Deborah had a word from God. She had faith and she believed that God had said, "This is the time for you to be free. This is the time to face Sisera and his army. I'm going to draw them out. Here's what we're going to do." Met them at the Kishon River. The chariots got stuck in the mud and the Israelites went. She took a risk. It easily could have gone either way. But as the leader, she was willing to take that risk because of her faith. In the early days of the Civil War, the first general-in-chief of the Union Army was General George B. McClellan. McClellan was this great engineer. He had been a commander in Ohio, but the post of first general-in-chief, or general-in-chief, really was a little bit too much for him, because McClellan was one of those guys that he failed to act. He didn't make decisions. He didn't take the risk. He was always preparing, but never acting. The army always needed more help, more training, more of this, more of that. He was not willing to take the risk, even when he had the advantage. And because of this, his lack of action, his lack of indecision, his lack of taking calculated risk, finally President Lincoln took it away from him, demoted him, took away that command, and was quoted even as saying this, saying that if General McClellan does not want to use the army, I would like to borrow it for a time. McClellan was unwilling to take risks. Leaders are ones that take risks along the way. We have to be willing to take a few risks along the way. Lastly, leaders encourage their followers. Deborah encouraged Barak to go against Sisera. When Barak showed up, she was ready. This is the time. And depending on what translation you read, she's either asking him, did God tell you this? Or she's saying, hey, you know God has told you this, right? This is it. This is the time to go, to make war against Sisera. God's going to bring him out. You are going to win. And Barak, because this is a time of great discouragement and doubt, he's not immune to that. He says, all right, fine, I'll go, but only if you go with me. And she did. Deborah said, all right, fine, I'll go with you. There were some consequences, but I'll go with you. And she was there as a symbol of hope and encouragement. Because everyone needs a little bit of encouragement. Abraham Lincoln, after he was shot, and they went through his pockets and found his last effects, the last things that he had on him. They found a newspaper clipping saying that he was a great leader. He needed that encouragement. If he wasn't getting it from everyone else, he needed it from somewhere. So he had the newspaper clipping saying he was a good leader. Everyone needs a little bit of encouragement at times. And as leaders, it's our job to be encouragers as well. A good leader inspires other men with confidence in him. A great leader inspires them with confidence in themselves. That's what it takes. Encouragement can be like a shining light in the dark. In those moments where it feels that there is nothing that we can do, that there's nothing going right. Encouragement from a leader can be like that light penetrating the darkness, showing us the way to go. As the church, we need to be encouraging people to be that light in the dark. Being a leader is not an easy thing. And we're not all called to lead in every type of situation. Young lady wanted to go to college, but as she looked at the application, she became rather disheartened when she got to the question that said, are you a leader? Being the very honest and conscientious young lady that she was, though, she answered as honestly as she could with no. Melded in, expecting the worst. So she was surprised a few weeks later when she got a letter from the college that said this: Dear applicant, a study of the applications has revealed that this year, our college will have 1,452 new leaders. We are accepting you because we feel it is imperative that they have at least one follower. We're not all called to lead in every situation. But as followers of Christ, we are called to lead in one way or another. Whether it's in our families, in our workplace, at school, in the community, at church. Somewhere within our sphere of influence, we are called to lead. So it may not be every single situation, but we are called to lead in various situations within our spheres of influence. We are called to lead with grace and humility and compassion. That's how an ordinary hero makes a difference. Let's pray.